The cream of the crop! Nobody does it better.
We all know the drill by now. Oda created the 11th supernova in the middle of Sabaody archipelago in a short amount of time to spice up the arc, and the rest is history. Oda himself stated that he expected half of them to be dead, especially Law. He was surprised that Law made such an important role and impact in the story, and only thought that Kid would be the only one to have an importance in his story. But here we are now with all of them in the new world making waves, and majority of them right now in the Wano Kuni arc, which is probably the most important arc in the history of One Piece as of right now. Luffy, Kid, Law, Zoro, Killer, X-Drake, Hawkins, and Apu are all currently in Wano country, and 6 of those 8 are currently in an alliance, with the other 2 surely to join them eventually, all of them all having their own motivations. What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Fly. Grab your snacks and put your seatbelt on and enjoy the ride, because today we're talking about the worst generation, aka the Supernova, and their impact on the story. We've all come to know them as the 11th supernova because 11 pirates somehow entered Sabaody archipelago at the very same time, all having bounties of over 100 million berry. These pirates are also known as super rookies. They are not the only super rookies that have shown in the story. The generation previous to them are Cavendish and Ace, and then afterwards there were Bartolomeo, Caribou, and those other scrubs that showed up on Sabaody when the Straw Hats reunited. And then there's Marshall D. Teach, aka Blackbeard, who's considered to be a part of the worst generation, which is Luffy's group after the events of Marineford. And although all these guys have high bounties at the time, you understand why they're called super rookies, because although they soared into the skies at really high speeds and made a name for themselves really fast, but in the new world you come to find out that these super rookies are just teardrops in an ocean full of sharks, with the emperors and their commanders eclipsing the bounties of the super rookies back on Sabaody archipelago. We've come to see how dangerous the new world is, and it's really sink or swim. It's either you serve under an emperor and survive, or you go against them and most likely die. And we've seen alliances being formed within the supernova, or at least the worst generation, and we'll come to know why they're called the worst generation, because ever since they've entered the new world they have made a name for themselves, and every time chaos or destruction was involved or some sort of incident, the worst generation was involved, with Blackbeard, Luffy, Kid, Law, Drake all leading the charge in the new world, as well as Hawkins. But those 5 in particular will be the main focus of this video, because I believe they are the most important, not most favorite. Before you guys are in the comments typing, but what about Apu and Capone? I like those guys are cooler, or Rouge, those guys are cool, I like their character, but those 5 that I mentioned earlier I think have more weight in the story. The worst generation is the new era that was left behind after Whitebeard ended his era at the end of the Marineford War. But what exactly makes them the worst generation, and what exactly makes them so impactful to the story of One Piece? Well, the answer is simple. They make things happen, they do not let things happen to them. And you're probably wondering, what the hell does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. Basically, just like with Luffy, he moves the story, he doesn't let the story move him, and he makes things happen. He makes moves, they cause destruction, chaos, and all sorts of events in the new world. And as we've seen ever since the Straw Hats reunited, every time there was an event or some sort of chaos going around, some member of the worst generation was involved. Blackbeard in the Payback War and becoming an Emperor of the Sea, Luffy with all his antics ever since coming back, Law becoming a Warlord of the Sea and stealing 100 pirate hearts and causing the Rocky Port incident, which we still do not know any details of that, and is the main cause and catalyst for all the events occurring right now ever since the events of Punk Hazard by breaking the gear. And then there's Drake trying to gain the trust of Kaido. We still don't know exactly what he did, but we do know that he is a secret agent for the Marines, a captain of Sword. More on that later. And then of course there's Teach, who was the entire reason for the Marineford War and the death of Whitebeard, causing an era to end and shifting the world into a new era. While everyone was being just complacent and preparing, it was the worst generation that had to make action to cause the world to start moving. In fact, since the very conception of this story, there hasn't been a single event or incident where a worst generation hasn't been involved, with of course our main character Luffy and Zoro and Blackbeard on the other side of things by killing one of Whitebeard's commanders and causing a domino effect. And then there's Eustace Kid, who is the only other supernova member that has Conqueror's Haki alongside Luffy and has gone against every emperor in some sort of compassion, by going against Shank by losing his arm, going in Big Mom's territory and injuring a suit commander and leaving with something of her possession, and currently in the Wano Kuni arc and battling against Kaido and his forces. And that's why I love the worst generation, because they actively do stuff and take action and make moves, even though characters that aren't even doing that much right now, such as Arouge, Capone, and Hawkins, they still out there planning things and making their attack, just finding the perfect opportunity, as seen with Capone and Whole Cake Island when he met up with Luffy, and that's when he tried to assassinate Big Mom, although he served her for about 2 years. Ever since we have entered the new world, there has been a worst generation member that has been a focal point of the arc that they're in. And with the war in Wano and Onigashima happening right now, it seems like the worst generation are yet again in the focal point of a major event, and that is with the falling of an emperor, or maybe even two, which will leave a huge gap in the new world. And many are assuming that we're going to have some new emperors in the mix, and many are thinking that Law and Kid are prime candidates to fill that void. I made videos previous talking about why we're not going to get any more new Yonko, so I don't think we're going to get Buggy, Kid, or Law as Yonko candidates. It would be really cool, but I just don't think that they have the power for that. And by power, I don't mean physical. Physically, they are very strong, but what I mean is the ally forces to actually make territory, unlike Luffy, who actually has forces. And also, the Yonko kind of are made to be barriers in the new world, and the world government are actually using them to prevent pirates from becoming Pirate King, because there is a power struggle within all the new world between the 4 emperors, and because of that, no one is able to become Pirate King because the 4 emperors are blocking that. The Yonko are not just barriers into becoming Pirate King, but they're also barriers of freedom, with Yonko being around and holding down territory and having a chokehold in the new world. You cannot have true freedom in the world of One Piece, and that goes against Luffy's dreams and ideology. And the worst generation kind of represent freedom and chaos, because with freedom comes chaos, of course. Shout out to my boy Zahir from Korra. But in all seriousness though, the Yonko system has been chipping away very slowly ever since Punk Hazard with the actions of Trafalgar D. Water Law. And once there is a power vacuum in the new world and the Yonko system falls, the world will fall into utter chaos, with pirates roaming around doing whatever they want, and the world government will finally be able to make a move in the new world, and it will just be a giant power struggle and truly be the throne wars. And the Yonko kind of they're just barriers of freedom, and they're no longer needed because they're just there to prevent people from becoming Pirate King. And that's why I'm so excited for Wano to end, because there's going to be a huge power vacuum at the very end. Whether it's just Kaido or Big Mom that both fall at the end of Wano, it's going to cause a giant vacuum in power, and there's going to be a power struggle within the new world, and I just can't wait to see that. And also, One Piece is coming to a close whether we like it or not, and the fight for becoming an Emperor of the Sea isn't really the ideal of what most of the pirates in the worst generation want. Even though they all have their own ideals, they all wish to become, or at least majority of them wish to become, Pirate King, and that is a title that far surpasses an Emperor. And that entire system is going to fall apart due to the actions of the worst generation. The worst gen are all characters that are going to shape the future of the One Piece world. And what's fun about the worst generation is that it's not only just the pirates that are the worst generation. Although we know X-Drake is secretly a Marine, you can also put some Marines in there like Fujitora, who just became an admiral or joined the Marines in the 2-year vacuum ever since the War of Marineford War. And we've seen the actions and the impact he has on the story by abolishing the Shichibukai system and trying to change the world government and Marines from the inside. But we can't forget Roronoa Zoro and his impact in the story. He is of course the main character, so that is not really questionable, but he does wish to become the world's strongest swordsman, and just by doing that feat and being alongside the Straw Hats and eventually finding Laugh Tale and being Luffy's right-hand man, he will have an impact on the world regardless. And then there's Arouge. We don't really know much about him. In fact, he's probably the least known supernova that we know, and probably the least interesting in my opinion, or at least for now, because once he's entered into the story, it's going to be a lot more interesting in the worldscape, because he is a Birkin, which was the previous homeland of Eneru or Enel before he blew that place up to smithereens. So once Arouge is fleshed out, we get to get more information on Skypiea and what really happened with Burka and why exactly he decided to come down to the Blue Sea. We seen him as a kid and he was holding a piece of rubble, so I'm assuming that that was a rock from the Blue Sea, and ever since then he was intrigued on how it was like and wanted to explore it some more, and ever since then he wanted to go explore it and enter down below. But last we seen of Arouge, he was on a sky island, and he was there when Kaido was first introduced. He was actually right above Kid and the rest of them, so him coming to the Wano eventually would be really dope. but I'm not so sure if he'll come now or later, but eventually he'll probably be involved with the war at Onigashima, which I think would be really dope, because Aruj I think has a lot of potential and he's a very interesting character, especially with his connection to Buddhism, and he seems to be going against those very principles because he loves everything that you're not supposed to do, like drinking alcohol, love making, and all sorts of stuff like that. And then there's Bonnie. We don't know much about her, but she is a very interesting character because she has a connection with Bartholomew Kuma, and when she was seen, she was confused as Queen Connie from the Sorbet Kingdom. We don't know what that really means. Is she actually a queen? Is she Bartholomew Kuma's daughter, wife? We're not really sure. There's a lot of theories about that. We'll talk about her in another video. And when she was captured by Blackbeard and Akainu, she was seen to be a very important figure in the world government, and he was surprised that she escaped. So we don't know her exact connection, but once that's fully revealed, it's going to be very important, and she does have an important role in the future and will have a greater impact when she's fully fleshed out. And because of her hatred for the world government as well as Blackbeard and their common interests, it's safe to assume that the Revolutionary Army and Bonnie are together, and the next time we see her is when the Revolutionary Army pop up back into the story. But she was searching for Kuma because she has some sort of connection with him, and so were the Revolutionary Army, and they were all in the same place. There's also Capone, who's currently having his cover story, and we already fully explored his character previously in Whole Cake Island, but it'd be great if he came back into the fold in Wano Kuni, because it seems like all the supernova seem to be gathering in one place. And of course there's Drake, who I think is going to be one of the more important Marines in the future, because after this event he'll be outed as a Marine, I think, and he'll no longer serve as a pirate. But again, he is a worst generation and he will play a significant role in the future if he survives Wano, because some people are thinking that the 1% meant for Drake, which would be kind of funny with Hawkins saying 1% a certain man will live by tomorrow, and Drake is like, that's funny, sucks to be him, but it's like, dude, it's about you. But like, that's a theory video for another day. Once again, Diaz Drake is based off the real life explorer Francis Drake, who is the cousin of Richard and John Hawkins, which funny enough is who Basil Hawkins is, and those two have always been seen together in Wano Kuni, and they're known for dying at the San Juan, Puerto Rico. So let's just hope that San Juan Wolf doesn't make an appearance in Wano.
Oops. They found me.
Drake was formerly a pirate under his father, who was a former Marine that became a pirate, and then Drake was adopted by Sengoku and became a Marine and ended up becoming a pirate, but it turns out he's actually a Marine. You see how confusing his story is? He also seems to have a close relationship with Kobe and is the current captain of the secret division Sword in the Marines, which many people believe Sengoku is the one who created it, which makes sense because we've seen back in the past that he adopted Rocinante aka Corazon, and he was a secret Marine that was working in the world of piracy and in the Dokionte family. And after the incident of Minion Island, he was found by the Marines and was probably adopted by Sengoku, similar to Corazon, and was raised by him, and thus that's why he is the captain of Sword, and that's why Kobe's probably in there too, because Sengoku and Garp's close relationship. Back in Punk Hazard, Brownbeard was explaining that whenever there's a major incident going on in the world, one of the Worst Generation members are usually the focal point or in the center. That's just to drive the point home that the Worst Generation, or in particular those characters that were name dropped, are going to have a very important role in the future of One Piece and in the New World. And as we've seen throughout the story, it seems to be very, very true. Once again, being the cause of a great event, and that's why I love the Worst Generation. I've said this so many times. It all goes back to Punk Hazard, Law's little monologue about the world and what's been going on ever since the 2 years, and saying that it seems like everyone's just been waiting and preparing for something but doing nothing, and it's because of the Worst Generation and their actions the world is finally making a move. And with death flags flying around all over Wano in the War of Onigashima, it seems like a supernova or two may meet their end at the very finale of this war. My thoughts is either Drake or Law, but not before Drake accomplishes his goal, which we have no idea what it is yet, but it seems he wants to actually open the borders of Wano for whatever reason he has. Obviously because the world government do want to know what's going on with Wano and probably want to have a connection with them, but there's probably more to it than that. He did specifically go out to look for Kaido and join his forces, so I guess the Marines wanted to really know what was going on in Wano because of how isolated it was from the rest of the world. And then there is Law, who many believe will eventually die due to the immortal surgery that was mentioned all the way back in Dressrosa with Doflamingo. On who he does it with, we're not really sure. It's been speculated. Some believe Luffy, some believe it'll be someone else, but I think that he will eventually die. And either way, once a supernova or a Worst Generation member dies, whether it be in Wano or in a different arc, will be very impactful for the story. And even though Oda had no big plans for the supernova in the story when he first created them, it's been seen ever since they were created how important and how much of an impact they've had in the story of One Piece and in the New World. And little fun fact, Basil Hawkins was actually intended to become a warlord of the sea, but he gave that position to Law, so that's probably why Hawkins and Law are always drawn fighting together in Wano, because maybe Hawkins is jealous. Anyways, that's the video, guys. Really want to talk about the worst generation, or well, the supernova, and their impact on the story of One Piece. Many people don't really think they have that much of an importance yet because they haven't been really fleshed out, but I want to put in perspective how much of an impact they've had in the New World and how important their roles are in the story. Even though not all of them wish to become Pirate King and they all have their own motivations going on, they all are very important in the grand scheme of One Piece, and they do have an impact of what's going on, especially in Wano Kuni, where 8 of the 11, or well 12 of the worst generation are on one island as we speak. And we know that Wano is going to be a very important point in history of One Piece, because once it's over, the borders of Wano will be open. Luffy will have 3/4 of the poneglyph, 2 yonko, or maybe 1 will have fallen, and there's going to be a huge gap in power. With the huge vacuum in the New World, the world government is finally going to be making a move, as well as pirates around the world, and the worst generation are going to be leading that force, and the throne wars will truly reach its climax, and the throne of Pirate King will soon be filled. Don't forget to rate the video, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay notified if you're new. Put down in the comments who your favorite member of the worst generation is and why. I hope you guys all have a good day and a good night. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Toodles!